Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. This is the first of our Open Day events. This is the Admissions Explained Open Day webinar presented by Uwcsea in Singapore. Good afternoon again. Welcome. I can see that participants are joining us. That's wonderful. Do come on board. It takes attendees a few seconds to actually join the webinar successfully. So please bear with us. We will get underway in just a few minutes, and we will allow our attendees to join us successfully, hopefully. So thank you so much for your patience. We'll get underway very soon. Now, while you're waiting, I'm going to invite you to enjoy a short video in which I hope you can get a sense of our vibrant, dynamic UWC-SEA community. Enjoy. Okay, welcome aboard again, everyone. We are delighted to have you join us this afternoon. Thank you for your patience, and thank you very much to those of you who joined incredibly promptly. Well done. Thank you for giving up your time. We know that time is precious for everyone, and many of you might be joining us during your lunch hour if you're here in Singapore, or if you're joining us from overseas. We really appreciate that you are doing this at possibly a difficult time zone for you. So thank you. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome once again. So we appreciate your desire to learn more about the United World College of Southeast Asia, and specifically today, more about our admissions philosophy and process. My name is Mallika Ramdas. I'm Director of Admissions at the college, and I have the great pleasure of working across both our campuses, the Dover campus and the East campus. Today, we hope to share some information about our admissions philosophy and our admissions process specifically. And to do that, I will be joined in the course of the presentation by my colleague, Katie Phantom. Katie is our Deputy Director of Admissions. But before I jump into kind of the heart of our presentation, I want to share with you that it was just a little over 2 weeks ago when we had the pleasure of welcoming over 1,000 new students to our 2 campuses. And barely a week after that, we welcomed about 300 alumni back to campus for one of our biggest alumni reunion events, which takes place annually in August. Now, during that alumni reunion event, my colleagues and I toured several groups around the college, and it was wonderful to see their amazed expressions at all the changes since they had attended as students here, in some cases 10 years ago, and in other cases 15, 20, or even 45 years ago. So we had members of the class of 1978 join us at this reunion. And as always in this month of August and September, I'm struck by how, the cycle of school life carries on each year, and it brings the expanding circles of our college community, where in 1 week, we're welcoming children as young as 4 years old to join our K1 cohort. And then a week later, we get to see how our students are transformed by our education and go on to, become these amazing people as our alumni, living out our UWC mission and values, each in their own way. And then I'm also struck by how certain things don't change. So as we were walking around, one of the alumni from the class of 2013 remarked that, wow, there's already a play rehearsal underway and it's only the first Saturday after school opened. And when he said that, another friend of his turned to him and said, "Why are you surprised? It's UWC after all." And indeed it is. That is very much kind of what happens in our very, very vibrant and ever busy community. So today, I hope through this webinar, you get some sense of that. And I hope as well that you will join us for many of our other open day events that we've got planned for you in this coming month. So we've got a combination of webinar events such as this one, where you will hear from our learning leaders in the different school sections and campuses. This year, we're doing combined webinars for each of our school sections, infant school, junior school, middle school, and high school. And you'll hear from the leadership of both campuses why they are so excited by the learning program in each of their schools. And then we've also got on-campus open day events, and we very much look forward to seeing many of you at those. So registration is still open for most of our on-campus events, although not all. We've had a very overwhelming response, and thank you to those of you who've signed up. But please, if you haven't registered already and you're still interested in attending either a webinar or an on-campus event, do take a look at our website, and you can sign up just in the same way that you did for this webinar. So today's presentation is going to focus very much on admissions, understanding our philosophy and our admissions process. And at the end, you will have an opportunity to ask us any questions that you have. Now, we request that you keep your questions to the admissions-related topics that are on your mind, and you can submit those at any point during this webinar via the Q&A button that you will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So just take a moment to identify that now. And in the course of our presentation, some of my colleagues behind the scenes will actually respond to some of the questions where they can type a response to you via that Q&A button, or also where they might send you additional sources of information on our website. So do look out for responses to some of your questions that way. And then we'll pick up a lot of the questions in the end of the session when my colleague Katie and I will both respond to your questions. So the other thing I have to say for you just in terms of logistics is that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with you in a day or two. That'll be posted on our website. So if you can't stay through to the end, or if you'd like to revisit this or have a friend watch, then you can certainly do that later on. And one last thing, you will notice that there is a button on Zoom called Show Captions, also labeled CC, and that allows you, if English is not your first language, to actually look at a transliteration of the presentation. So it gets transcribed, and you can choose which language you would like that to choose to follow along. So please feel free to use the captions if that would be helpful to you. Okay, so with that, I think we are now ready to dive into the presentation. And one of the things I want to start off with is I'd like to invite you to consider whether United World College is the right school for you, for your child, for your family. And I think the answer to that really lies in how you respond to this big, bold mission that we share along with all the other 18 United World Colleges that are part of the UWC movement. And as you can see, our mission is a big mission, a bold one, which claims to make education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. So we'd like you to think about whether that mission resonates with you, whether that, along with our values represented on this slide, is what appeals to you and to your family. Our values are really important to us, and we expect that anyone who joins this community will live by those values and demonstrate them in their own way of life, and also in how they interact with others, both within our community and in the wider world. So that's sort of where I want to start. And I think, the idea for us is that these values are lived out in action by the young people that we educate and by all the adults around them. These are represented in our guiding statements. So there's this quite intricate visual that you'll find on our website, which represents how we take that idea of the mission and values and our educational goal, represented in circles 1 and 2 here. And those are underpinned then by our well-being principles and by our learning principles, represented in circle 3. And those shape, in turn, the holistic education that we offer our students, represented through the learning program in circle 4. And in our upcoming webinars, you'll hear a great deal about how those 5 elements of our holistic learning program actually unfold within each school section. And then through that holistic learning program, we are trying to really impart to the young people who are educated here and the kinds of skills and qualities that we consider to be our UWC-SEA profile. That's what you see represented in circle 5. And all of this hopefully leads on the educational journey that kids are on, that students are on here, to developing them as the young people who will go on to enact the mission, the final part of this diagram, as they go out into the wider world beyond UWC. And that could be at any point. They don't necessarily all graduate from United World College here in Singapore. We have a very dynamic community. We have students who would join us, are with us for some years, and then go on to move to a different school. And the beauty of the way we structure our program and the nature of the curriculum, which is a concept-based learning program, I'll say, or actually you'll learn a little bit more about that in the next slide, which is a video, that enables that mobility of the education that we offer. But regardless of how long a student spends with us, it's that alignment, that appreciation, and that desire to embrace the mission and values that we're really seeking and hoping to develop in young people who are with us for any length of time. Now, I mentioned that we structure our program as a concept-based curriculum or a concept-based learning program. And to give you a flavor of what that means, I'm just going to play this short video.
What is concept-based learning? Concept-based learning is centered around big ideas. Ideas so universal that they transfer across place, time, and situation. Content is important, so students must acquire knowledge and skills within each discipline. But the ability to make sense of their knowledge and skills in the world around them is just as important. This doesn't happen by accident. Students are given a variety of experiences so that they develop conceptual understandings, significant ideas that transfer to new contexts. This ensures that they thrive in a complex and unknown future. The UWC-SEA concept-based curriculum leads to the IB diploma in grades 11 and 12 and is developed from our mission. Our educational goal is that students embrace challenge and take responsibility for shaping a better world. To do this, they must develop higher order thinking skills and apply their learning to diverse situations. Because our community is so international and diverse, our students bring a wide range of experiences, knowledge, and skills with them when they join us. A concept-based curriculum allows them to connect their prior learning to our experiences at school, as well as develop deep understanding. How do we develop conceptual understanding in our students? Concept-based learning goes hand in hand with learners having a diverse and broad range of experiences. This is achieved through all 5 elements of our holistic learning program: academics, activities, outdoor education, personal and social education, and service. We explicitly plan for concept-based learning by asking conceptual questions and teaching through inquiry, exposing students to content that stretches and deepens their thinking, fostering dialogue and collaboration, asking students to generalize and apply their ideas to new contexts. Together, these experiences support the development of conceptual understanding in our students.
Thank you for watching that video along with us. And I hope that that gave you some sense of how our concept-based curriculum really informs everything which we do, and how it spans across all elements of our learning program, not just academics. So you've heard a lot about the mission, the values, and the concept-based curriculum. And now I'm going to turn us towards thinking about admissions at UWC SEA. And what we do in admissions is really we're trying to select for the mission, by which we mean that we're really seeking students and families who are open to the kind of education we offer and who have the desire to live up to that mission and those values, who have the potential to align with those. And in doing this, we're really seeking to build an intentionally diverse community where our differences push us to learn more about each other and to then become change makers in the societies in which we live. So that's really our admissions philosophy. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Katie Phantom, who will take over and start diving more deeply into our admissions process. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you very much, Mallika. So we know that you must be very curious about what our admissions process is, and we hope to give you some clarity about this over the next few slides. But what I'd like to start off by saying first is what our admissions process is not based on. It's not based on a first come, first serve or academic rankings. We don't have quotas, and we don't have a rolling admissions process. So as Mallika has touched on already, we base our admissions process on the mission. It is a mission-driven process which mirrors our holistic learning program. So let's explore that a little bit more. So like many schools, we have entry criteria, and this is what UWC SEA's looks like. So approaches to learning. This is probably one of the most important areas that we look at. Is the student excited about going to school? Are they engaged in their learning? We also look at academic attainment, but even though we're not an academically selective school, we do have a rigorous program, and we want students to be able to thrive in our program. So we are typically looking for students who are achieving within the middle to the upper bands within their current school's attainment levels. And interests and involvements, again, a very important area for us. Will the student take advantage of the opportunities we have available for them? Will they look to challenge themselves, take risks, and grow within our program? And does the applicant's family have an understanding of UWC SEA? Why are you choosing us over other schools that are available for you? And for students applying for the middle school and high school, do they have an understanding and a potential to align with UWC's mission and values? And for applicants applying to boarding, we need to check that they're suitable for our boarding community. So at UWC SEA, we welcome multilingual learners. Our medium of instruction is in English, and we don't offer a bilingual program here. Therefore, we want to share with you what our expectations are as to the level of English that is needed to meet our entry criteria. So for our English language learners, we are delighted to share with you that we no longer require our primary and our middle school applicants to undertake an EAL assessment to determine their eligibility for the applicant pool, therefore removing a lot of the burden and the stress for our student applicants. But we will continue to carefully review all applications from English language learners, and we strongly encourage all families to read the EAL guidelines for applicants on our website. So for example, for our infant school applicants, our K1, K2 and grade 1 applicants, students should be able to access the learning in the classroom, share some of their ideas in English without significant support. And our grade 1 applicants should have basic literacy skills in reading and writing, ideally developed in an EMI, an English medium instruction schooling environment. And for our junior school applicants, grade 2, 3, 4, and 5. For grade 2 and grade 3, we do expect our students to have sufficient proficiency in English to access the curriculum and participate in the programme. Students may have developing literacy skills, but we would expect students to have 2 or more years of EMI schooling or a similar level of English language and literacy development. And for grade 4 and grade 5, we do expect our students to have strong communicative skills in English, but they may still be developing their literacy skills. And we're looking for students with 3 or more years of EMI schooling or a similar level of English language and literacy development. And then for our middle school and high schoolers, so our middle school is grade 6, 7, and 8, students will need to have strong oral language fluency to access our learning programme. Their academic English proficiency in reading and writing will need to be strong, and students with 3 or more years of EMI schooling or a similar level of English language and literacy development through other means. And just to note for our middle schoolers, a very small number of applicants may be invited to take an assessment just to determine their final English course placement. And for our high schoolers, grade 9, grade 10, and grade 11, students will need to demonstrate sufficient academic English language proficiency to access our high school learning programme. And for English language learners, we will ask our students to complete an online EAL assessment for our high schoolers before they move on to the next high school interview and assessment process. So what do we consider when we're reviewing applications? So many things, as you can see from this slide. So school reports, but again, we're mainly looking for approaches to learning. We're looking for additional information from an applicant's current school if it's needed. We will reach out to that school if it's needed. And for K1 and K2 applicants that are based in Singapore, we will invite your child to come for a meet and play session. For those who are outside Singapore, we will connect with their current school for a little bit more information. And for our primary and middle school applicants who are English language learners, we will be considering the outcome of their EAL review. And for English language learners applying for the high school, we will be considering the outcome of their virtual EAL assessment. And then any assessment outcomes for those students that may be required to take an assessment to determine what learning support they may require in our programme. For grade 6 applicants and above, the student statement, this is a very important document to us. We want to hear from the student themselves, and it is usually one of the most interesting and informative documents in the admissions process. And this is a very good top tip to parents. It is really important that this document is authentic. It's in the student's voice. We don't want to hear what the parents want to say, and certainly not ChatGPT's voice. Please make sure it is the student's voice. And then any other information. So please tell us about your child, your family's interest in Uwcsea SEA, and we're also very excited to understand how you're connecting with us, what attracts you to us, and in what ways do our values and our mission appeal to you. And then for our high school applicants, we're really looking a little bit more in depth into these considerations, which are intellectual motivation, active commitment, social competence, resilience, personal integrity, and again, an understanding and the potential to align with Uwcsea SEA's mission and values. So how do we measure all of this, especially for our high schoolers? So our high school selection process is aligned to the mission and was informed by how Uwcsea scholars around the world are chosen. It is designed to be both holistic and immersive, where applicants spend time interacting with each other and with Uwcsea SEA's admissions department, academic staff, and other high school students in one virtual immersion program. So for students who are required to take an online EAL assessment, they will only move on to the high school interview and assessment process if they have demonstrated sufficient English proficiency to be able to thrive in our high school program with placement in a suitable English level course. Then the interview. So this will be with a member of our academic team, which could be the principal, a vice principal, or a head of grade. And for boarding applicants, it will be with a member of the boarding team. So for example, one of the directors of residential life or a boarding house parent. And then the group interaction and discussion forum. It's run by both admissions and high school students facilitators, and will involve the students interacting with each other and with our admissions staff and high school students. Applicants get the chance to ask our student facilitators any questions that they have at the end of the session. And it's usually a very, very informative session for our applicants. For our grade 11 students, we may also require further information depending on what language the student chooses for their IB. And if a grade 11 applicant opts for either music or art or design technology, we will ask for a little bit more information, like a portfolio of work, just to ensure that the student will be able to manage at either the higher or the standard level for their IB diploma. So now I'd like to hand back to Mallika, who will talk about how we create and craft our community from our applicant pool.
Thanks, Katie. So you've hopefully got a much richer sense of some of the considerations that we have when thinking about our applicants and when reviewing applications. So once an applicant has met our entry criteria, which Katie outlined for you, we then have the very challenging job of creating our community from that applicant pool in terms of selecting students to whom we will then make offers for the limited number of spaces that we have available per grade and per campus. And when we create our community, we are, as I said before, seeking to create as intentionally diverse a community as we possibly can. So we ask ourselves these two questions. Are we creating a community that is as diverse as it is possible to be? And are we being as inclusive as we can responsibly be? And what I mean by that is that it's really important to us that students coming in can enjoy their experience here and can thrive in the learning program in all 5 elements of that learning program. So if a student has extra support needs, perhaps for a learning need or perhaps for English language and social emotional needs, we must make sure that we are able to support those needs before we can select that student to join the community. So those are some questions we ask ourselves. And a question that we are often asked is, what do we mean by diverse? So I want to unpack that for you a little bit in the next slide. And you can see here that we consider many different things when talking about diversity. Now, for a lot of people, that tends to, they might think about diversity as only nationalities or only languages. But as you can see here, we're actually looking at it much more broadly. And for us, we are interested in a lot of different attributes and different kinds of difference, if that makes sense, in terms of what applicants might bring into the community. So we're looking at a range of academic interests, particularly for the high school applicants. We're looking at different personality types. It's fascinating in any class or in any cohort of students to see the range of different personalities. And that is what makes, each class an interesting place. We're looking as well at cultural diversity. Now, that could be from within the family, or it could be the product of where students have lived, the kinds of experiences they've had in one or more countries that they have grown up in. We're looking at learning needs and neurodiversity. And as I mentioned before, we are thinking about how inclusive can we possibly be given the support provision that we have. We're also looking and interested in different educational histories. So we have a combination here of students who have lived their whole lives in Singapore and perhaps attended a local school for most of their schooling before they come to us. But equally, we have students who have experienced 3 or 4 schools before they come to us, some of them within national curriculum systems, some of them international schools. And then we are considering talents and skills. Katie mentioned that we ask about involvements and activities, hobbies and interests, and all of that gives us a rich sense of what students have already experienced and what they might be interested in developing further when they come here. We're also, of course, looking at diversity in terms of different ethnicities, genders, gender identity, as well as religious backgrounds, nationalities, and family backgrounds. I want to touch on economic diversity for a moment because, of course, we are limited to some extent in our ability to have a wide range of economic diversity. But one of the very important ways in which we do achieve this and do enable access to an education that some students would not otherwise be able to afford is that we have a close partnership with the UWC National Committee process, and we invite and welcome scholars to our high school community, as well as a couple of scholars to our middle school community every year. And so in the boarding community particularly, but also in the wider college community, our scholars coming through the National Committee selection process play a huge role in not just enriching our community, but also enabling access to students who would not otherwise have that opportunity. And then just to finish up on this slide, of course, we mentioned that we are a highly multilingual community, and we love that aspect of our diversity. And so we are certainly also looking at the language backgrounds that students come with and what that could bring. And when we're considering these different kinds of diversity, I want to emphasize that your child is who they are and embodies the experiences that they have had in their lives so far, at whatever point they apply. So our goal is not to get you to somehow make your child more diverse than they are, but really it's up to us to select from our applicant pool to enhance the diversity of our existing cohorts of students. And we look carefully at the composition of our existing grades, cohorts, and of course the boarding community as well, but for boarding applicants. So those are some of our many different considerations. And so when selecting from our applicant pool of eligible applicants, meaning those who have met our entry criteria, we're keeping all of these different kinds of diversity considerations in mind. And then we're also thinking of what I'm calling on this slide demographic considerations, which are things like, does the child have a sibling already at the school? Is this a returning student or a child of an alum or somebody who is perhaps the sibling of someone who graduated from the college? And we're also considering reapplicants. So sometimes if a student is not successful in their first application, they might reapply to us, and we certainly pay close attention to our reapplicants as well. Again, there are no guarantees of admission for any of these demographic considerations, but I want to let you know that we certainly do pay attention to them. And then we put all of this together and we do a massive juggling act to select which students we can make offers to from our eligible pool of applicants. And of course, we're limited in our space availability when we do this, which is why we have some really difficult decisions to make every year. I want to next show you what our anticipated space availability looks like on each campus. And please, please keep in mind that these are our best guesses. So they are guesstimates at this point, because we don't know how many leavers we might have from our current community. And so this is certainly, these are moving numbers at best. So at Dover, these are our anticipated spaces available for entry in 2024-25. And you can see that those are some healthy numbers in the different grades. You will notice one slight anomaly there, which is that we say we have 0 spaces for K2, kindergarten 2. And that is unfortunately true because we do not open applications for K2 on the Dover campus. That is because we don't add a new class section in this grade, and we typically have very few leavers from our K1 cohort who tend to move up into K2. However, families can place their names on a register of interest. And if you're keen on this, you can certainly contact us and we'll tell you more about that. So typically, we might have 2 to 3 applications per place across all grades. So that's sort of the selectivity level, if you like, for you to keep in mind. So that's what Dover looks like. At East, our anticipated spaces for 24 entry look like this. Again, healthy numbers, and you can see that there are a couple of grades there where there are relatively small numbers of anticipated spaces, grade 3 and grade 5 in particular, and that's because we don't add new class sections to those grades, so we are completely dependent on leavers from our current community. Now, the tallest bar chart shows you 88 places both at East and at Dover. I'll just flip back to Dover for a minute so you can see that again. And that's because our K1 cohort is actually all new students, of course, and therefore that is the biggest entry grade of entry that we can offer. And again, at East as well, we typically have 2 to 3 applications per place. Now, my colleague Katie will say more shortly about how you can apply and the fact that you can choose to apply either to one campus or to both campuses. And so I will let her take that over for you and get into the actual application process now. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you very much, Mallika. So you have all this information now, and hopefully you are at a point where you're ready to apply to us. And you can do so via our online application form, which is via our website. And it's at this point that you need to decide whether you want to apply for a single campus, so either Dover or East, or whether you want to apply for both, which is what we call a dual campus application. If you do decide on a dual application, be really sure that you are happy to accept a place at either campus, as the campus you will receive an offer from is decided at the point of offer. And for boarding applications, your application will automatically be a dual campus application, as we consider boarding applicants for both campuses as we craft our diverse boarding communities. What we ask you also to submit to us are school reports. We require a minimum of 2 years of reports. And if these reports are not in English, we will require you to get these translated. And for applicants applying to grade 6 through to grade 11, again, the student statement, another reminder of our top tip, that this must be in the student's voice, not the parents, and not ChatGPT. And then we're looking for any other information which is relevant or pertinent to the application and the applicant. So if the student has an educational psychologist or a speech therapist report, you must submit that as part of your application submission. And lastly, the application fee. And then your admissions journey. How will we partner with each other as you progress through our application and admissions process? So once you've submitted your application, you will receive an email acknowledgement to confirm that your application has been successfully submitted. You will then receive an outcome of your application submission after it has been reviewed to let you know if your child has met our entry criteria. Your updates for us are really important. It is essential that you update your application with new reports or new information about your child since their application submission. And our updates for you, we will be in touch with any further updates for you as soon as they are known. And then, of course, your continued support by your dedicated admissions officer throughout your application process. Please do not hesitate to contact them if you have any queries at all. They're here to help you and to hold your hand through this process. So the timeline of application deadlines and our offer timeline. This just gives you a quick overview of the timeline. We opened applications on the 1st of September, which you can see here on the blue box, and the start of term 1 will be in August 2024. In red at the bottom are our application deadline dates. And in grey at the top, we have our offer rounds ready for an August start. And we also have a second entry point for a January start, which I'll explain in a little bit. All of this information is on our website, but let me break this down for you a little bit more now. So for entry into K1 through to grade 8, our offers are made in 2 offer rounds. December 2023 will be round 1 and March 2024 will be round 2. Please note the application deadline dates of the 3rd of November for the first offer round and the 2nd of February for the second offer round. If we don't manage to offer your child a place in the first offer round, we will continue to consider them for the second offer round and beyond as well. For students who are requiring EAL and learning support, these offers are more likely to be considered in the second offer round when we have more clarity on the spaces available. And we still continue to make late offers depending on late withdrawals from our current students from approximately May through until July. And then for our high school and our boarding applicants, and we board from grade 8, our offers are made again in 2 offer rounds in January of 2024 and March 2024. Please note the deadline application dates of the 3rd of November and 5th of January for our boarding applicants, and the 3rd of November and the 2nd of February for our day applicants. And just like our K to grade 8, late offers will continue to be made depending on late withdrawals from our current students from approximately May until July. And then we have a second entry point, which is for our term 2, which starts in January. So that is primarily for our K1 to our grade 8 applicant pool. So if we weren't able to make an offer for a place to start in August, you have the option to remain in the pool for a term 2 start in January. Alternatively, you can apply directly for a term 2 start. And we're very proud to announce today that brand new for January of 2025, due to the flexibility of Uwcsea grade 9 program, we're now able to offer a term 2 January 2025 start for our grade 9 applicants. But places will be limited, and we envisage that not all subject options will be available for our grade 9 applicant. Please contact us for more information about that. So for January start, places are dependent on current students leaving at the end of term 1, and these offers are made in approximately mid to late October of 2024. So now I'd like to hand back to Mallika, who will now introduce our wonderful admissions team. Back to you, Mallika.
Thank you, Katie. So I am very happy to be able to introduce our team to you, at the moment virtually via this photograph, but I hope that many of you will come over to our campuses for our upcoming open days, or at some point in the future for a campus tour perhaps, and you will get to meet our wonderful team of admissions officers. As you can see, we're a large team. The team is split across the 2 campuses, and depending on which campus you apply for, you will be assigned one of the admissions officers, and that person will be your person, your admissions officer, throughout your application process for your child. We do assign the same admissions officer to one family, so don't worry, you won't have to develop a relationship with more than your admissions officer. And also, depending on whether you apply for just one campus or for both our campuses, again, you will just be assigned one admissions officer, even if you're applying to both our campuses. And our team are well-versed in knowledge about both campuses. Don't worry about that. And indeed, you'll see many of the team who work on one campus on the other campus for our open days where it's a massive team effort anyway. So that's our admissions team. And we invite you to connect with us in a variety of different ways. You can, of course, pick up the phone. You can connect with us via email. We have the opportunity to book a virtual meeting or a campus tour also via our website. And then there is this QR code here, which will take you to lots of information in the form of brochures and fact sheets, as well as to the admissions website, where you can access lots of information as well as frequently asked questions, among other things. So that's a little bit about who we are. And that essentially brings us to the end of our presentation for you. And we will now turn over to questions and answers. I can see that lots of questions have come in. You've been a wonderful audience and you've been keeping your questions coming. And I'm sure that my colleagues in the background, Ashu and Maria, who are our admissions managers on our East and Dover teams respectively, have been fielding some of your questions and sending responses through to you. But we'll also pick up a lot of your questions live now and give you our responses. But I want to pause for just one more moment on this concluding slide where you can see some profiles, mini profiles of some of our wonderful alumni. I started today's presentation talking about what a treat it was to meet lots of our alums a few weekends ago when we had our reunion event. And you can read more about these individuals on our website. And really kind of see the way in which their UWC education has impacted them. We have alumni all around the world, literally in every corner of the world at this point, with a 50-plus-year-old history of the college. And so it's an incredible community and an incredible resource, actually, to our current students. So I want to leave you with that thought. And I'm now going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see Katie and me together, and we will go to your questions. So Katie is going to serve as our moderator for the questions. We probably won't get to all of them, I should say, to begin with, but please feel free to keep them coming. And also, I want to mention that we will focus here on admissions-related questions. And if you do have questions related to the learning program, to a particular school section, or to student experience at the college, then save those for the upcoming webinars devoted to our different schools, because you will certainly have an opportunity for more questions then. And we'll also be around for admissions questions in those webinars. Okay, Katie, do we have some questions we want to go to?
We have plenty of questions, Mallika. Thank you for asking. So I think we'll probably start with the most asked question, and that's all about our K1 applicants. So a lot of questions about not having more than 1 year's report because the student's not been at school for more than 1 year. Parents are asking, are we still allowed to apply with just 1 year of reports?
Sure. That's wonderful. We are very excited to have lots of K1 applicants in our audience. It is indeed the biggest intake of students, as I showed you. So the answer is simply yes, absolutely. You can apply for K1 even if you can only provide 1 year of school reports. In a few cases, we even get applications without any school reports for a K1 child if your child has not been in schooling, in formal schooling. And that's fine. We always ask you to provide information in the application for a teacher whom we can contact if your child has been in some form of schooling. And we will often reach out to their current school for more information. That is particularly the case for children who are overseas. And as Katie mentioned in her part of the presentation, for those applicants for K1 and for K2 who are in Singapore, we invite your child in for what we call a meet and play session. This is a play observation session where our infant school team interact with the children in small groups and just see how they do within our learning environment. They have different toys and games and activities that they are engaging the children in during that 30 or 45-minute time period for the meet and play. And they're really observing and getting a sense of whether the child is ready for the very dynamic, interactive learning environment, and able to also kind of follow along simple instructions in English and that kind of thing. So that's really how our meet and plays are structured. And you can certainly learn more about this from our infant school team in their upcoming webinar. But just to go back to the issue of school reports, yes, we can consider your child, and just please submit whatever reports you do have. In some cases, that might be, I mean, some little ones like to start school really early, and sometimes we have nursery reports and pre-K reports, and those are all really, really helpful. I will say shout out to pre-K teachers. They do some of the best jobs in terms of report writing. So if we have any teachers in our audience today, I would like to appreciate you for that.
Thank you, Mallika. And just sticking with the meet and play question, a family is asking, when do we hold our meet and play sessions? I think they're just worried that they might not be in the country or away on holiday when one of those sessions is on.
Great question. So we have so many K1 applications that we have to hold a number of different meet and play sessions. So we basically run them more or less on a weekly basis during our term time. So obviously we need to do that during our term time so that our infant school team is available. And we do have designated slots that the infant school give us, and we will invite your child to one of those. And if you have some reason why that particular date doesn't work for you, although we do have very limited flexibility, if it's really a case where you are out of the country at that time or something like that, we will then make sure we, invite your child in for a suitable date.
Thank you very much. And we had one parent who was very carefully watching our charts of availability of places and correctly noted that we don't have our K2 place at Dover. So they're asking what their options are. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what this family's options are for K2.
Certainly. So as I mentioned, unfortunately, we don't open applications for K2 on the Dover campus. However, we do at the East campus. But of course, that means that you need to be comfortable with your child attending East campus. One of the things we didn't say explicitly, but I will use this opportunity to say it, is that once you've accepted a place for your child at whichever campus you've applied for or whichever campus we offer you, if you are applying to both campuses, then that does become your child's campus going forward. So we do not permit a campus transfer from one campus to the other. So in the case of K2, because we have this slight anomaly where we can't offer, we don't open applications for both campuses, you do need to think this through a little bit more carefully, because if you do apply for K2 at our East campus, which is open for applications, if we do offer your child a K2 place there, then that will become your campus. And so if you do have a preference for the Dover campus instead, then actually our recommendation would be to wait another year until you can apply for grade 1. And then you have that ability to be offered a place at Dover. I think I want to reiterate as well, Katie's very important note, that if you are going to make a dual campus application, which is our admissions speak for applying to both campuses, then it's very important to us that you genuinely don't mind which campus you may be offered a place at, because we will make that decision. It won't be your decision to make. So when you apply to both campuses, for us, you're basically telling us, I like both your campuses equally, and I don't care which campus my child gets a place at, because I just want them to have a high quality education that UWC SEA can provide. And we hope that's how you feel. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, that's a very good segue into one of the questions that we had. Was a family is considering applying dual, but do they have the ability to say which campus that they would prefer if there was an option of a preferred campus?
Yes, they do have, you do have that option on the application. You can indicate that. And if you would like to let us know that in a different place, you can also put that into the additional information section.
Thank you, Mallika. Now, going to the completely other end of the applicant process and looking at our grade 11s, we've had quite a few questions about the additional information that we may need for our IB students with regards to their language and their portfolios. I think families are just interested if there's any limitations, what kind of things they need to provide to us, and how will that be assessed to see whether they're able to access those subjects for the IB.
Sure. Yeah. So for grade 11 students only, we do ask for a writing sample in the language that the student is hoping to study in IB, if that is a language other than English. So the structure of the IB involves all students studying at least 2 languages. Their best or home language, and then another language. So if they are wanting to study a language other than English at a level that is anything more advanced than the beginner level, or what's called the ab initio level, then we will ask for a writing sample of like an academic essay or something like that. And then that essay gets referred to a head of department for that language within the school, who then makes a recommendation on whether the student can take the language at their chosen level of study, which is basically either higher level or standard level. And then based on our head of department's recommendation, we'll come back and tell you, yes, that's fine, or no, you now need to think about a different language. Sometimes the teacher, the head of department might want to have a conversation with the student, learn a little bit more about the language background, because there's a whole sort of range of different kinds of experience with language, and some have studied it formally, some may not have studied it formally, but actually speak it, and are perfectly fluent. So those are the kinds of decisions that we leave to the heads of department. So that's a little bit about languages. Coming to the other subjects that Katie mentioned, where we ask for more information. So for music and for art, because these are highly specialized subjects, which typically require some prior background in that subject, we do ask the students to submit a small portfolio of work that will enable the head of department to just get a sense of that student's ability level in the subject. And again, usually that's all they need, and then they're able to, make a recommendation on whether the student can go ahead and take that subject, either art or music, at higher or standard level. And then for design technology, our team finds it, our department finds it useful to have it's a very brief response to something called the DT questionnaire, design technology questionnaire. Again, just kind of getting a sense of the students. It's more like a sense of their conceptual understanding of design and technology. They don't have to produce some grand portfolio of work, so don't worry about that at all. And that's why it's helpful. And again, all of this only applies to grade 11. I want to emphasize that. This is only for students applying to join our IB program, which is offered in grades 11 and of course in grade 12, but entry is into grade 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Mallika. Quite a few questions about our offer rounds. So one question is how many places do we typically offer in our first round? And then another question around if an applicant didn't make the first round offer, would we consider them again?
Sure. Coming to the first part of the question, we will typically offer about 40 to 50% of available spaces in each offer round. So basically in our first offer round, if we are anticipating we will have a total of 30 spaces, we might offer about somewhere between 12 to 15 of those 30 spaces in our first offer round, and then fill the rest in our second offer round. We do aim to fill all available spaces that we know of by our second offer round. However, after that, we frequently have late spaces that arise because, as with many international schools, we do have a transient population to some extent. And so sometimes families get to know quite late that they are actually relocating out of Singapore. And so that gives rise to late spaces. And we will continue to fill those all the way from May through to July. And that can create another opportunity for more offers. So that was the first part of the question. And I have now forgotten the second part of your question.
That's very good. I have also forgotten, and I have now deleted from there. There were some other questions about if they didn't make the first offer round, there is no need to apply again for the second round. We would consider them again.
Thank you. Yeah. That's correct. Yes. So once you've put in an application, we will continue to consider that application for any subsequent offer rounds within that particular admission cycle. So you do not need to reapply. If you have met our first round deadline and we cannot offer your child a place in our first offer round, that application basically continues to roll through, and we will consider your child for the second offer round. And if we can't offer in that offer round, they will continue to be considered for late offers and for K to grade 8 and now for grade 9 as well. If you tell us you still want them to be considered for a term 2 or January entry point, we can also do that. And that kind of completes our annual admission cycle, goes through to the January of that entry year, but it does not go through to the following admission cycle. So we do have an annual admission cycle. So I think we've now answered that question.
Thank you very much, Mallika. A couple of questions about considerations. Who do we consider in the applicant process? So a few questions from reapplicants. We've got an alumni asking some questions, and also sibling of current students. So are any of those categories considerations when we're looking at offers for the next academic year?
Sure. Yeah, those are some great questions. Thank you to our audience. So as I said, all of these are certainly types of applicants or categories of applicants who we pay special attention to, for sure. I think that it's fair to say that, most families or many families like to have their kids at the same school. And so I think the sibling consideration is certainly a very strong one, that if you have a child who's already attending the college and are now applying for another child, that we do pay attention, of course, and we try our best to keep families together as far as possible. Having said that, I have to clarify two things. Every child, regardless of whether they have a connection to the college already, whether that's an alumni connection or a sibling connection, each child who is applying must still meet our entry criteria completely independently of whether or not they have any connection to the school. So that's really important to us, because that really determines whether or not your child is, whether the academic program, whether the learning program more holistically is going to be a good fit for the student, and also whether we have the support provision that we may need depending on the particular child's needs. So that is important. The other thing I want to say is that there are some grades in which demand is really very high. Grade 1 comes to mind. It's a grade when a lot of families choose to apply because that's kind of a logical point where they feel it's time to move their child out of a smaller school environment into kind of big school. And so in really high demand grades where maybe our ratio of applicants per available space might be as high as 4 or 5 rather than 2 or 3, which I gave as the average, then we have some really difficult decisions to make. And we might have a situation where, we would fill all available places just with siblings alone, but that wouldn't give any chance or opportunity to anyone else. So I used the phrase "it's a juggling act" before, and I'll repeat that here, because I want to give families a sense of just how challenging it can be. But we do look at, and we have markers for all of these different, considerations, whether that's a sibling of a current student, whether that's an alumni connection, or a reapplicant. And again, reapplicants, we do have a fairly large number of reapplicants. We're very fortunate to have such strong interest in the college that families do try again if they were unsuccessful one time. And we really do pay attention to that. Again, we cannot guarantee placement for everyone in that situation, but we certainly pay attention to that. And we certainly appreciate your continued interest. And I want to reassure families that it will never go against you to reapply. That is not looked at negatively, quite the contrary.
Correct.
Thank you.
And some great questions here, actually, that I don't think we've had before. So some families are asking, if a student gets into the middle school and then moves into the high school, is there a screening process, or do they have to apply for the middle school to then move into the high school if they're a current student?
Not at all. You continue to progress through the school once you're at the school. One of the things that we obviously consider is for any child, actually, regardless of grade, is, whether they are doing fine, thriving, doing okay. But there is no academic selectivity that determines whether you move on from grade 6 into grade 7, or indeed from grade 8 into grade 9. There are no extra hoops that a student has to jump through to land from middle school into high school.
Thank you, Mallika. And the perennial question that we have about Singapore citizens. So families who have children who are actually Singapore citizens at the moment, and some families here have pending Singapore citizenship applications in process. They are asking whether they can apply to the college.
Sure. So I'll take that in two parts. I will address the issue of those who are already Singapore citizens. And I want to stress that this applies even if the child has another passport as well. So if the child is either just a Singapore citizen or has dual or even multiple nationalities, where Singapore is one of those nationalities. So for Singaporean children, we have certain categories where we will consider applications from Singaporeans. And this is because we have to very carefully manage our Singapore population at the college in terms of the numbers of students who are Singaporean. As families may be aware, in order to attend a foreign system school, as the government calls us, in other words, an international school, a Singapore citizen has to have what is called an MOE waiver, which is a waiver that waives the mandatory requirement that you must attend local school or the MOE system school. So because we can only put forward a certain, a very limited number of MOE waivers will get approved typically from, in each year, we do have to manage this very, very carefully. And that's what leads to our priorities in terms of which Singapore citizens we will consider applications from. So we do have a very detailed web page about this. And I'm sure my colleagues are flicking that information through to you as I speak, or they may have already done so. But we would strongly encourage anyone whose child is already a Singapore citizen to read that page, because essentially the categories that we can consider are those who have a sibling at the college, or those who have an alumni connection, either being a child of an alum or a sibling of an alum, or high school students who are returning from overseas. So a high school applicant, rather, returning directly from overseas, not already currently in Singapore. And so those are basically the categories of Singaporeans. And all of this for the younger students will be only past P1 registration age in the local P1 registration exercise to get into MOE schools. Sorry, this is a lot of information, but it is on our website. So that's as far as Singapore citizens are concerned. I will now address the issue of whether those who have a pending Singapore citizenship application can consider applying. And I'm afraid the answer to that is no. We have very strict terms and conditions about this, which you can read about again on our website. And very simply, the reason that we cannot consider your application is, again, related to what I just mentioned, which is that if your child becomes a Singapore citizen partway through the admissions process, they now may not fall within one of the categories of within one of our permissible categories for considering the child's application. So unfortunately, if you do have a pending Singapore citizenship application, then we would need you to wait for the outcome of that application completely before you can even start an application with us. That was a rather long answer. I'm a little
sorry.
so I am going to grab a sip of water at this point, but keep firing away, Katie.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions about the actual application form itself. So how long does it take after the application form has been submitted? Does a family receive any notification from us is question number one.
Great question. So Katie mentioned that you will receive an application acknowledgement. Now you will receive something automatically the moment you submit an application online. That is a system-generated acknowledgement, but your real human being acknowledgement, if you like, will come about 2 to 3 weeks after you have submitted your application. And that is because our admissions officers at our end, when your application comes in, start looking very carefully through every single part of your application, including all of the uploaded documents, to make sure that the application has been fully completed with all of the relevant information. That includes all of the sort of passport, birth certificate information, the school reports, the student statement in the case of grade 6 and up, as well as any additional information that you may need to provide, particularly if your child has learning needs or anything like that. So all of that can take quite a bit of time. Sometimes we do need to chase for information. So one way in which you can really help us is by looking very carefully at our application user guide and really following those instructions on how to submit your application fully and thoroughly so that we have all of the relevant information. That enables us to give you that acknowledgement of your application sooner rather than later. So do keep that in mind. And also, when we talk about our deadlines, our application deadlines, what we mean by that is a completed application. So just meeting the deadline does not ensure that your application can be considered for an offer round. If that application is incomplete in a variety of ways, then actually we would not be able to consider it for that application round. So again, give yourselves enough time and read that user guide, which is available in a few different languages. Am I correct about that, Katie?
Yes, you are. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so in addition to English, I think our user guide is available in 3 other languages, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. So do take a look at that and read it really well before you start on your application.
Thank you very much, Mallika. A very important point there. So the next question about the application form is, there's a lot of free text areas on our application form. Do we have a word limit? Are we expecting long essays for families, or would we prefer very distinct information on those sections?
I believe we have a character limit, not a word limit. I cannot possibly tell you what that is because it's been quite a while since I've thought about this, and I can't remember the guidance we gave our IT team on that, but there is a character limit. Honestly, a fairly concise response is all we need. We do not need lengthy responses. More is not necessarily better. And just tell us what you need to tell us, and that is all we expect. I think I want to emphasize quality rather than quantity here, because actually the responses that we care a lot about are: why are you applying to UWC? In what ways are you connecting with us? Why is it important to you to have your child have this education? That's the kind of thing we want to hear about. And I also want to stress again, in the spirit of more is not necessarily better, that families sometimes feel that submitting lots and lots of certificates of your child's various achievements in, I'll take swimming as an example since I've got the pool behind me, whether it's swimming or debating or sports or drama or whatever, just there's space in the application for you to identify activities and interests. And we do want to know about that, but lots and lots of certificates makes no difference to us. We believe you. So just tell us the information and we go with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mallika. So we've had a huge amount of questions. I'm just going to pick a couple more questions. My colleagues are furiously typing behind the scenes, so we are sorry if we don't get through to everybody's questions. A couple of questions on the EAL language levels for students. Can we just clarify exactly what EMI stands for again, Mallika? And when we're calculating our EMI, is it up to the point where the applicant will be joining us or at the point of application?
Yes, very good question. So EMI stands for English as a Medium of Instruction. So we're talking about schools where all subjects are taught in English other than languages. We are not including bilingual education in that because in bilingual schools, there's usually a combination of some subjects being taught in English and others being taught in whatever the other language is of that bilingual schooling. So that's what EMI means. And in terms of counting, we will count up to the point of enrollment with us. How many years of English the child has had. So we're thinking about that. We're factoring that in to how we are viewing the student's language development. I hope that has answered that question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mallika. Just a little shout out for our boarding webinar, actually. We have a few questions here about our boarding environment. So if those families haven't already signed up for our boarding webinar, I really do encourage you to do so. It's a very informative session. So please do register that on our website.
Yes, and I believe that's during the first week of October. It's
Correct.
in the same week as our high school open day webinars, as well as our high school on-campus events. And I think I want to, again, emphasize that if you are considering boarding, that boarding webinar really gives you a great insight into the communities on both our campuses. That is a combined webinar hosted by our directors of residential life on both campuses. They will be joined by current boarding students, as well as other staff in their teams. And it's a lovely way in which to get a feel of the human beings who will be part of your boarding community, as well as even the physical spaces, because they're actually, you'll see students sitting in some of the common rooms and things like that during the boarding webinar.
Thank you very much, Mallika. A lot of questions about a typical ratio of applications to places available. I know that we shared our slides with that, but I wonder whether you could just very quickly mention that again for our families.
Certainly. So as an average, we get 2 to 3 applications per available space. So typically your odds are 1 in 3 or 1 in 2.5 to 3. Having said that, I will repeat that, each year brings interesting new surprises, I guess. And typically we will see very high demand, much higher demand for grade 1. So grade 1 space availability is always very, very, very tight in relation to the number of applications we get. But also that can happen for certain other grades as well. It really depends on the year. And my crystal ball is shattered when it comes to predicting how many applications we might get for particular grades. So we'll see what this year brings.
Thank you, Mallika. And our very last question, even though we've still got about 160 to answer, I am so sorry. Quite a few questions about the student statement. Can they deliver it in person? Can it be a video? Does it have to be in writing? I wonder whether you could just confirm that for us.
Thank you. So at the moment, we are still asking for our student statement to be handwritten by the student. I think that's an important point, which we perhaps didn't explicitly mention. You can actually access the student statement question prompts that we have on our website already. And essentially, it's quite simple. There are 2 questions asking the student to tell us a bit about their interests and involvements, and what they would hope to do if they were to join us. And also another question asking about why they're interested in applying to the college. It's really important to us for that, as Katie had said earlier, to be the students' own work and their own thinking. We want to see some evidence that they've actually thought about applying, and that this isn't just the family wanting them to apply. So in that sense, it is really important that it is their authentic engagement with us. We want to get a sense that they understand who we are and the nature of this community and the nature of the opportunities available to them here. But we also just want to hear in their own voice, what it is that they love to do and why. So I think the student statement for now is a handwritten student statement that we are expecting. We strongly encourage you to actually use our prompts and to use our form for the student to respond. And also the length of space that we provide on that form is a good indicator of the length that we typically expect. Again, we do not want, pages and pages of writing. More is definitely not better. So the quality. And then I want to emphasize that we don't want to hear what the parents want to tell us. We don't want to hear what, you might have a family friend helping you with the application. You might have an agent helping you with the application. But as Katie said, it's really important that this is the student's own thinking and own writing. Please do not use AI support with this, because we can tell. In my past life, I was an English teacher, and yeah, we can always tell. We're good at that. So just make it, let hands off, walk away from your child while they're doing this, and let them enjoy telling us about themselves.
Thank you very much, Mallika. And I want to thank our audience for some fantastic questions. Apologies we didn't get through to them all. We've worked as hard and as fast as we possibly can, but some fantastic questions. And back to you, Mallika, to round us off.
Thanks a lot, Katie. I want to do a shout out to my team. We've had our admissions managers typing away furiously in the background to respond to as many questions as they can, and to my fabulous colleague, Katie, for moderating this part of the session. And most importantly, I really want to thank our audience. You have been amazing. We've had such a great response. This is only the kickoff webinar. There are lots more to come. So I want to remind you of that, and do sign up if you haven't already, and encourage any friends who perhaps missed today's session to tune in. The recording will be available on our website in just a few days from now. Our team, our marketing and communications team, is absolutely fantastic, and they will, I'm sure, whip it out for us very soon. So do sign up for other webinars, and do come along to our in-person open days if you've already registered, or if you haven't yet, then you still have an opportunity to do that. And as far as questions are concerned, please don't feel that today was your only opportunity. As I mentioned before, there are lots of ways to connect with our team, and we would be happy to support you with any other questions that you have in your other connection opportunities with our team. Thank you all very much again. And please enjoy getting to know more about the college. And of course, if you remain interested in applying, then we very much look forward to reviewing your child's application. Thank you, and bye-bye for today.
Bye-bye.